Hey everybody, it's Tim Hepworth here with Fly Fishing Boat Outfitters and Thursday Night Live Fly Tying. I'm here to bring you another quick tie from Season 4. Tonight we are going to go through the Sulfur Emerger. It's the guy we're going to be tying up, okay? So if you head on over and you grab your kit, your Season 4 kit, if you don't already have one of these, you can still purchase them from our website. Head over to www.flyfishingboatriver.com/TNLS4 and purchase yours today. If you go ahead and open that up, today we're looking for Season 4, Episode 5. You see you have two different patterns in the back. We're going to be tying over the one with the yellow dubbing. This is going to be the Sulfur Emerger. So go ahead, open that up, get that emerger style hook in your vise, and we're going to get over. Let's over to the vise and get started. So today you're actually going to be tying with a couple of different threads. So I have two spooled up. Yellow is kind of the original color that they use for the underbody. In your kit, we actually gave you some yellow dubbing in case you don't have yellow thread, and you can just dub the thread and do the same thing. I do prefer to use just the heavier thread anyways. The thread that I'm using for this is a uni thread. This isn't a 6/0, okay? Just to what we're gonna use build our body out of. And then I'm gonna be using some brown, this is UTC 70 denier, like so. This is gonna be the other thread I use. So first off, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and start your darker colored thread just up behind the eye. Now I want you to give yourself a fairly long tag when you start, okay? Because it's important, we're gonna use that. So I'm gonna take this, work that all the way back, quite deep into that bend of the hook. This is an emerger style hook, and we're actually gonna leave that tag attached, so don't get rid of that, okay? And we're gonna bring this back up to the 2/3 mark back, or a third mark back from the eye. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna grab our first material that we're gonna put in here, which is gonna be our Zelon or Antron yarn. This is gonna represent the shuck of the fly. So if you pull that out of your kit, you're gonna see you have this kind of heavy piece of this stuff. I'm gonna get you to split that in half. We're not gonna use that much of it. So just basically split it in half, and we'll pull that back together so it looks like so. And this is what we're gonna end up tying in, okay? Don't worry about how much is hanging off the back, because we're actually gonna trim this shuck to length once we do this. So what I'm gonna do real quick is I'm gonna get this attached, and I'm actually gonna switch out my threads. So I like to use this thinner one just to get it attached. I'm gonna go in there. You can almost spin this up like so. Trim it out nice and close, set that aside. You can use that on your next fly. So what we got here now, guys, we still have that thread attached. We got this just started. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna throw a half hitch in here, do it twice. And I'm gonna trim that thread out. We're gonna come back and use this brown again, so don't put it too far away. Then I'm gonna go over to my yellow thread and get that started, right where I trimmed that one out. And we're gonna use this for just a little while here. Trim that out. Make sure you don't trim out that thread that you left on, and we're gonna use this to bind this down moving back. Now keep this right on top of the hook if you can. We're gonna go pretty deep into that bend as well. Okay, just the way this is gonna sit in the water, we're gonna go pretty deep into that bend. Now that we're down there, we're gonna work our way back forward. This time, we're gonna be really deliberate about making a nice, even underbody. This is what's gonna be showing through. So it's important we got that nice, solid yellow color, so we're covering up all that other material so it shines through quite nicely. We're gonna work that right up to kind of where the thorax and the fly would be. We're gonna go right here. Gonna do the same thing, gonna half hitch it. And we're gonna trim that out. Okay, set that aside. We won't use that yellow again. Now we'll come back to our brown thread, reattach it behind the eye, and we're gonna leave it right there. Okay, now we're gonna get to where that tag was that we left on there. Throw a quick half hitch just to make sure it doesn't come off, and I'm gonna go set that out of the way. So now I'm gonna come back here. Let's trim this to length. Now remembering we still have that piece of thread in here, right here, it's separate, okay? Do not trim that because we're gonna use that. So in trimming length here, I'm gonna take halfway down the hook, and I'm gonna measure that same measurement off the back of the hook, and that's where I'm gonna trim. Okay, that's gonna represent my shuck off the back of the fly. Can get rid of that. Now we're gonna work with this piece of thread here. I'm just gonna grab a pair of hackle pliers, doesn't really matter what style, and we're going to attach that so it doesn't come off. Like so. I just have it simply attached, squeezed in there, a clamp style. Now we're gonna go over, you're gonna need some dubbing wax, okay? And the stickier the better. This stuff is the Loon High Tack Swax. It is nasty stuff to work with, but very, very good for what we're using it for. So what I wanna do is I wanna come in here right up tight. I'm just gonna dab it on there, okay? Not too much. I don't want it to be a ton of wax on there, but what we're gonna do here is we're gonna teach you a technique. It's called touch dubbing. And we're actually gonna dub this very, very lightly just by using the wax and a little bit of touching some dubbing on there. So I'm gonna go back and let that hang. You've got all that on there now. Now I'm gonna go over to that brown dubbing that you have in your kit there. It looks like this, okay? I'm gonna grab a little chunk off. Doesn't need to be a ton. We gave you way more than you actually need. And I'm gonna break this apart a few times, okay? I'm gonna pull it apart, pull it apart. And now what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna kind of cord it up the best I can, kind of roll it. So it looks like this. I'm gonna take my scissors now, and I'm gonna come in here, do one trim to kind of get the ends off. And now what I'm gonna do from here is I'm gonna actually trim and kind of let fall. So I'm gonna do the first trim here, then I'm gonna get close to the table so I don't lose it all. Pieces about that wide, kind of a 1/4 inch cut. Now go ahead and cut that whole entire piece into 1/4 inch chunks, excuse me, onto the table in front of you. So we want very, very short dubbing to do this touch dubbing style of dubbing a thread. So once I've done that, I've got a whole pile of them. Gonna look something like that, just a whole pile of these little trimmings. Now kind of work them into a little ball, pull them apart a bit. They're gonna be much shorter fibers now. We kind of left with something that looks like that, okay? Now what I'm gonna do from here is I'm gonna pull that up like so, and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna touch it on. If I get too big of clumps that go on, that's a little bit too much all at once, just pull it off, okay? I'm just gonna touch it on. You could probably compare this to like a wisp. We really don't want a lot on there. We just want enough to, when we palmer this up, it creates a very buggy appearance. And you want it evenly spaced out the best you can. Do a little touch up there. Filling any of the little gaps that might be in there. But that's more than enough, okay? We don't want a ton on there. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the rotary function on my vise. I'm gonna start right at the back here. Just nice, evenly spaced palmering up. Again, if we have a little piece that maybe we feel is a little bit overdone, just get that out of there. Evenly palmer that forward till we reach that thread, okay? Now one thing I'm gonna say about this fly is it's not an overly pretty fly. When this thing is done, it should look super buggy and not super attractive to you, but that's not who we need it to be attractive to. It needs to be attractive to the fish, and that it does a very good job at doing. We'll go ahead and trim out that little bit of a dubbing thread we had there, set that aside, and now we're left with something that looks just like that. A little bit of bugginess, we got some of that yellow coming through still. I'm gonna work my thread back to that a third back from the overall length of the hook again. We're gonna leave it there, okay? Next stage here, we have a little bit lighter dubbing in your kit. Looks like this, kind of a light yellow or cream color. We're gonna build the thorax of the fly out of this, okay? So remember, this is an emerger. So this is gonna sit with just slightly under the surface, and the wing that we put on at the end is gonna kind of hold it up just slightly, okay? So this is what we're gonna build the thorax out of. You do not need very much of it, just another small little dubbing noodle we're gonna create here. Okay, remember, always take your fingers in the same direction when you're applying this to your thread. Okay, nice and thin, we don't need a ton. Make sure it's wrapped quite tightly. We're gonna come in here, make a nice little, kind of bulbous little thorax. We're gonna advance that thread just in front of it. I'm gonna throw a 1/2 inch in here just to save that work we've been working on. Don't want any of it to go anywhere. We're gonna leave it like that, okay? Next piece of the puzzle, we're gonna go over to the hair that we provided in there. Now the common hairs that are used here would be like a comparadun hair. If you know what that is, very, very light. It's normally a little bit more expensive hair, designed to make wings on small flies, or using caribou. Caribou is another very popular one for this pattern. Caribou is actually the original material used for it. We're gonna go ahead and grab this, grab a decent little clump off, something in the market of, hard to measure on this one because it's a very small fly. Grab a little bit more than you think you might need, but somewhere in that market, okay? Go ahead, trim that out. We are gonna stack this in a hair stacker. So once I've trimmed that, I'm gonna hold those butts and try to get any of that little bit of under hair out. That'll help us in the future. This hair can actually be pretty difficult to stack because it is so fine. You can tell there, it's just a very fine hair. Doesn't stack overly well. So a little tip with your hair stacker is, if you're struggling with when you pull this out and the hair wants to stay in there, take a dryer sheet, swish it around in there, it gets all the static out, and the next time you go to do it, your hair is going to come out right the way you want it to, okay? So take your hair stacker, go ahead, put the tips in there. Let's see if we can get this to work for us this time. It's a little staticky as well for me. Tap it pretty good. Now you want to orientate it so that when you pull the base off, it's at the back side and the hair is already pointed backwards. Yeah, this little guy almost didn't work for me either. Pull that out though, all those tips are stacked. You can see the nice dark tips, light, and then that little kind of mid-range color behind it. Go ahead and pinch that. Now I want you to gather all the butts together so you can get a good look at how much you actually have on there and kind of test it on the fly. I like that amount. That's a good amount. This is more of a wing to hold this up in the water column. This is going to sit just above the surface while the rest of the fly is going to be underneath. Okay, so now when I'm measuring this one, I'm going to tie it in. I want you to measure off the front of the eye, leaving the very back tips hanging almost back to the hook bend. Okay, so it's just barely getting to the hook bend. I'm going to switch hands over here. Okay, I'm going to come here. I'm going to take a couple of good wraps around that hair. I'm going to do a little clockwise spin because I'm tying in left-handed fashion. So that's going to cause that to jump back towards my finger and grab the hair. If you're tying right-handed, you would just do it counterclockwise. Put a few nice firm wraps down. Okay, so that's not going to go anywhere. You can see that's going to pop that hair up quite nice. That's going to prop it up. That's what it's going to kind of sit on top of the surface. Now I want to grab those butts and pull them back. I'm going to put some thread wraps in front of it. Kind of build almost a little bit of a dam here. The best that I can. What I like to do here, guys, is go ahead and throw a half hitch in right here. It saves the work of what we did in putting in that hair. Now I got to go in there and trim all those butts out. So let's get in here. Trim them out as close as you can. You don't really want anything extra here. You don't want to trim any of your wings, so just be careful you don't get so close that you do that. Once you get that pretty close, give a light breeze on it, try to get some of that extra stuff out. Take some thread wraps down towards the eye. You want to make a nice little ramp to the eye. We're going to finish off by putting just a little bit more of that same cream colored dubbing. Okay, cream colored dubbing, this guy here. We're going to put just a wisp right at the front here, and then we're going to whip finish this fly and be done. Just going to grab just the tiniest amount. Make another little tiny dubbing noodle. Nice and thin. Make sure it's right up there. Couple wraps back towards the hair. Bring it forward. I'm going to have a little bit too much on here, so I'm going to get that out of the way already. Tighten it back up. Go right down to the eye and finish her there. Okay, guys? Now all I'm going to do is I like to use my little half hitch tool. Makes it really a lot easier when you're coming in to finish on these flies. Double wrap it. Get the tip over the eye, slide it down, get the knot on it, lock it in place. Throw a little bit of resin on that, and that's not going to go anywhere. I'm going to trim out that. Now I'm going to take a quick look at this fly, make sure I have all the extra bits of material because we put lots of stuff in there. I want to clean it up and make sure it looks nice and even. Sometimes you got to go in if that hair came around a little bit and make sure you get that out. Make sure you got all that trimmed out of the way, nice and uniform. There you have it, guys. That is our Sulfur Emerger. You've seen it here first or second or maybe last. Good fly, keep a bunch of them in your box. Thanks again for joining us. This has been another quick tie. Tim Hepworth, Fly Fishing Boat Outfitters, and we'll see you next time.